What is he thinking when he's not talking? Stay tuned. This is Damon Cart from NLP Gym. We are continuing the conversation with Dr. Matt here, so
Hi.
we'll quickly do a short introduction. If you want a longer introduction, go to the first video where we started this conversation. We wrapped a week-long training here in San Diego, California, and it's the first time I meet Dr. Matt. He's from Poland. He's got some NLP training. I say some. You've got a ton of NLP training behind you. But what really struck me is he has so much more training in so many different areas, which he calls interdisciplinary psychology. And he has blown my mind day after day. We've just been having these mind-blowing conversations, and I knew we had to eventually get this on video, and we couldn't just do one video, so we've done multiple videos. So I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about your credentials. In addition to lots of NLP training, what other training have you done in education that you have?
I'm a PhD economist with specialization in management, and I defended my dissertation and wrote it on personal branding, how to create personal brand on a YouTube channel, right? So it's something very modern and very useful, because if you want to become a YouTuber, I scientifically researched how it's supposed to be done, and I'm sure we will cover. This is one of many topics we wanted to talk about. Secondly, I've got masters in psychology and in law, and I studied in Poland and in Germany. I lived in many and lectured in many different cultures, which gave me sort of interdisciplinary but also supracultural attitude towards human beings. I learn from every different culture, put it all together, and then create universal tools and models which I apply in different contexts, in sales, in marketing, in personal development, in management, leadership, so that simply a person who gets the tool is more effective.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have remembered all of that. It's quite a resume.
It is.
One of the things that came up, and one of the things that comes up a lot with women, because I'm always fascinated with the male-female relationship.
Of course you are. You're a man.
But perhaps more than a lot of men, because it seems like women, this is really women's area. They're really good at this. They're really intuitive. But I've heard women say so many times, what is he thinking when he's not talking? What is he communicating when he's not talking? Women often in relationships with men, that's one of their major complaints is they don't know what he's communicating because he's not communicating. But
there's no problem. Women are communicating in an ambiguous way, right? So they can say one thing and mean something else.
Yeah.
But this is stereotyping, right? This is, we're joking about this. But you're right that there's many discrepancies or many differences in the way men and women communicate, right? And I think it's a very good idea that you start with this topic, because it will clear many things when it comes to male-female communication.
Yeah, it's women will come right out and say, I feel this or I feel that, whereas a guy will kind of just sit with it and not say anything about it. And I hear women complain a lot about that. And what I try to tell women about this is that no, we're both communicating all the time, even if we're not speaking.
Right.
The verbal is just a very small form of how we communicate. And listening to you communicate and watching you communicate with other people, I'm fascinated with how you communicate, because you do it very well.
Thank you.
And I remember this question came up for me because I'm fascinated with the whole topic of the relationship between men and women. Is I kind of don't know what to tell women whenever they ask this question. What is their man communicating when he doesn't seem to be communicating?
Well, because it's a very large chunk up question, which sort of is expecting a quick answer, like sort of a solution how to become illuminated in 3 days, right? This sort of thing. So you cannot answer it without paying attention to certain factors which need to be considered, right? Firstly, when we say a man, what do we really mean by a man? Do we mean gender, right? So body of me or you, or do we mean masculine energy? Because masculine energy can also be felt and expressed by women and men at the same time, right? When we say man, do we mean older men or younger men? Do we mean generation of baby boomers, right? Or X generation or millennial generation? Or do we mean Z generation, born after 2000? Because all these four generations that we have right now on the market basically are completely different when it comes to what masculinity means, right?
That's so true. Yeah.
So we will treat it in a different way. When we say man, do we mean Californian man, right, with LA, Hollywood, blockbuster superstars, or do we mean someone who is way more, less known, or someone who is much more introvert, for example, right? Do we say USA? But do we talk about Americans or about Latino population living here? Do we say Americans or we say South Americans or we say Europeans, then we say Russians or Germans or Italians? See, this is where we should be starting with, and this is fundamental because culture influences behavior in a great manner. Actually, it's been researched that when it comes to shopping decision, 70% of our shopping decisions are influenced by others. So it basically means that we follow what the others are doing. So when a man is communicating with her, she should firstly ask herself a question where he's coming from and what's his background, because this will explain a lot. Say we've got a baby boomer, right? It's a man who might be 60 years old, right? Typical behavior and typical thinking would be of firstly vertical hierarchy, right? If I'm older, I can know better, right? Because I'm a man, I can know better than a woman, for example. I'm stereotyping. The sociology, of course, is not just, but this is, we've got certain research to prove that there's certain communication style, and that, for example, millennials are thinking in a more horizontal way when it comes to management, and baby boomers in more vertical ways. If I'm a CEO, I'm here, and you as my manager can be here, right? While millennials will think, but we're more even, right? So it's nothing personal, it's just a communication style that one needs to learn. So for example, if a man born in the 40s or 60s is not showing his emotions, it's not because he doesn't feel them. Yes, he does. It's because he was taught and he was delivered a story that a man who shows his emotions is not masculine. So he would suppress them, he would hide them, because he doesn't want to come off as a man who's not masculine. And it has nothing with him as a person, he simply hasn't been educated. So apart from asking a question, what is he really thinking, a woman should be thinking, how can I educate him to communicate in the way that is good for both of us? Because there's this notion of I need to find a prince charming on a white horse is so overrated, right? Given by all kinds of stories for children, and we watch it on TV constantly. One day a man who truly understands you will appear, right? No, I think you call this in English bullshit, right? This just doesn't happen. What will happen though is that you and you two will grow, right? That you will educate each other on different communication styles, and sometimes it will be so that a man cannot show his emotions because he simply judges himself. He says, example, he says, believe that if he cries, he's weak, right? So he's never going to do this because he suppresses it. Sometimes he was not trained in empathy, so he doesn't feel what she's feeling, right? In this moment, you have a situation like this. She's like this. And he says, but honey, what happened, right? And she goes, nothing, absolutely nothing. Obviously, she's incongruent, right? But she's teaching him that this means everything is okay. Because in her mind, the story goes like this. Not only did he insult me, but he's also pretending that he didn't do it, and he doesn't know what he really did, right? This kind of soap opera, right, which reminds of telenovela, right? Spanish-speaking telenovela is just a cheap, unfortunately, everyday drama that many couples who could be perfectly happy are living because of a certain dynamic. For example, you should know what I'm thinking. No, I should not, because I can be an educated bloke, but really I'm not a telepath. There is no PhDs in telepathy yet, right? So you can tell me and ask me, right? We have a topic of what he's really thinking when he's not talking. Maybe we should start with how should I ask him a question so that he really tells me, right?
That's
there you go, right? You're responsible for your own communication, right? If you're not telling me something, maybe you're afraid, maybe you're suppressing something, maybe simply you don't know what you're really feeling. I mean, emotional intelligence is taught at schools in Denmark, but it's not taught here, right?
Yeah.
So people not necessarily know the name of the emotion that they feel. Is it really what I'm feeling still motivation, or is determination? Is it sadness, or is it fear? And because they don't know, they cannot judge adequately on what they are feeling, not mentioning how to talk about this. Because now here comes another aspect. If I tell you what I'm feeling, aren't you going to judge me? See? Because maybe she has an expectation that he should be a strong man. So he's not going to show her what he really feels because he's afraid of rejection. He will not tell her that he's afraid of rejection because the social stigma is we should be strong, right, as man. So all this creates a certain dynamic where even though he's ready to show, he would not because he's afraid to be judged, right? Or he judges himself, right? Or he simply doesn't know how to talk about his feelings. We're not taught at schools how to do this.
I gotta tell you, it's like you climbed into my head. It was like you're putting words to the times
Right.
that I was like, oh my God, I've gone through that exact same process, and I kind of pride myself on being, connected to my emotions and being able to communicate them and being good with words. But I still get stuck in that.
I think all of us do, Damon, because it's human psyche is a very profound abyss, and we really don't know how deep we're gonna go. Sometimes it's not that I'm only feeling sadness. Sometimes it's sadness and sorrow and a bit of enthusiasm and hope at the same time. If people don't have serious psychological knowledge, probably they cannot use adequate words to describe what is happening, not mentioning the concept of love. If you think that probably statistically every third song is about love and it's usually based on metaphor, do you guys use this structure like have butterflies in the stomach?
Yeah.
I mean, no surgeon would see it when they open the stomach, right? But people use metaphors because they cannot logically explain what's happening with them, because they have no education in it. So we are basically bound to either learn it by ourselves or attend seminars with the experts to understand what's happening so that we really can be associated with our emotions, and instead of escaping from them, start working with them and start explaining what we're feeling. You said, I think that's, you ask a question, so what he's thinking. I think we should teach both men and women here a few things about calibration. What do you think? So that they can actually read their reactions, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing we touched was collective social personality, where they are coming from, right? Which generation, which culture. I would definitely focus on their parents, right? What kind of patterns they got from childhood. Was it allowed to speak about what someone felt, or there was some taboo topic, right? And this is interesting because men suffer from depression worldwide, but they wouldn't talk about this because they feel judged when they do, because the stigma of being strong is so visible. Secondly, to give you statistics on suicide, men commit suicide 3 times more frequently after breakup than the women, right? Talk about strong machismo culture. See, it's gonna get us. This way or another, it's gonna get us. We really have to know how to do this. So once you realize what kind of background he has, then you can go into basic archetypes, right? So let's talk about typology of man. Is he more logical, right? A sage kind of concept, right? So he uses cause and effect patterning to scientifically control the world. Is he more bad boy, right? Sort of more James Dean kind of type, right? That's, sort of distanced, right? And he's a player. Is he more a father figure? He will take care of you, right? He treats you as a daughter and so on. Is he more a feminine friend? He's like a girl, but in man's body, right? So he can talk about all the girly stuff with you, right? Is he an average Joe, a regular guy who simply wants to be happy, doesn't need a posh car, to show off? Is he a child inside an adult man's body who needs someone who takes care of him constantly, and he will attract mothers? Because this basic archetypal personality will immediately construct a certain communication style. So for example, if he's a more scientist or sage kind of personality, then he will probably explain the feelings being detached from them emotionally. So it's not like I'm feeling depressed or I feel sadness. It's rather I feel sadness, kind of, robot logical dissociated figure. If she projects her own communication style onto him, then immediately they will go into conflict, immediately. Because she's thinking, if he's communicating it this way, it doesn't mean, for example, that he doesn't respect me. It's a mistake of projection. Projection is based on cause and effect pattern. Effects we can see. You have a t-shirt, I have a t-shirt, right? But the reason why you have your t-shirt might be different than my reason why I bought a t-shirt. Projection distorts this reality and says, because I bought my t-shirt because I like the material, Damon must have bought his t-shirt for the same reason. No, maybe you got it as a gift from someone and you wear it because it reminds you of a person that you really like or admire. Projection in relationship means that, for example, if he's like this and she thinks, if I were in this position, I would be very angry, then she says, why are you angry? Instead of asking a question, why are you sitting like this? He's saying, but I'm not angry, I'm simply tired. And she says, but I can see that. So now here the conflict starts, because instead of asking questions, what are you feeling? What's happening with you? What happened today? You can honestly tell me, you're not going to be judged. Feel safe with me, and so on and so on. There is so much projection going on that people convince themselves that what they interpret is really what's happening with another person, making a mistake of projection is perception. No, ask a question and you will know, right? So once you understand the collective types of man, then you go into more subtle calibration. For example, when it comes to face, right? What's happening with his face? On face, we mostly focus on two aspects. One aspect is eyebrows, right? And another is smile. Your mouth and your eyebrows will show most of the most important emotions. I suggest using Paul Ekman model of 6 basic emotions. There's anger, right? Sorrow, enthusiasm, contempt, and so on. So that when you see his face, then you know what's going on. If he says, everything is okay, then you know that his body is showing you something. So once you have this covered, then you go into body posture. There's basically 3 dimensions in which a human body can move. Forward and backward, right? Left, right, and up and down. That's why certain emotions are connected with certain physiology. Example, if someone is proud, they will always put their chin up, always like this. This is why you see people in VIP clubs walking like this, right? Because this is a physiology of pride. If someone is afraid, they will usually make themselves smaller, and this way they protect themselves from what's happening. If someone is very self-confident, even getting arrogant, then they would be like this, right? Which usually you see young men like this in bars where one stool is just not enough, right? Because they want to expand on territorial levels. You calibrate the body, you look at the body posture, and you figure out, so what's happening with them? What do they need to feel in this situation? Because if someone is in this position, there's research which says that, Harvard research by Damon Cart, which says that in 2 minutes, this person will produce less testosterone and stress level will go up. So you can basically predict that they're going to be afraid if they're in this position. So if she's talking to someone and says, how are you? He says, I'm fine. No, he's not fine. The question is he lying? I wouldn't say lying, rather protecting himself from judgment, right? Which we constantly do in public sphere anyway, right? Absolutely. Constantly, which is naturally just part of the game. Then you always should calibrate the context. Where are we? Why is this happening? When is this happening? What could be the reason for it? How intensive is it on the scale from 1 to 10? Example, say he is talking to his mother on the phone and he feels a certain emotion. It's a different context than when he's talking with his wife, for example. Why? Because he uses different personalities or different roles and even different psychological age to talk with those 2 different people. With his mother, he might be still on the level of a young teenage boy, right? Because this is where his development or where his personality is stuck. But with his wife, he's an adult man. So with his wife, his communication style is going to be more direct, and with his mother, way more delicate and subtle. So wife can say, you treat your mother better than you treat me. No, it's not true. He talks to her differently because he has a different belief connected with mother. For example, you should always respect your mother, right? And when it comes to a wife, you should always be honest with your wife and say what you really think. So as you can see, before we draw a conclusion, and I mean, I'm a psychologist and we should be the first one to draw conclusions, right? To analyze and so on. I strongly suggest all our viewers to have certain distance and even be skeptical when it comes to judging. Because what's really happening with the person if you don't ask, considering that they will tell you the truth, which is another thing, and you have to prepare an environment of safety for that, before you ask, really get all this information down that we're talking about, because this way the probability of drawing the right conclusion is simply higher. And there's more probability that that you will know what the person is feeling, what they are showing, and so on. Don't only use your eyes or words to calibrate, use also your feelings. It's called empathy. Empathy is one of 4 basic pillars of emotional intelligence, apart from motivation, realization of emotions, and the ability to regulate them. And empathy is ability to feel what you're feeling, detaching myself from it, and without acting upon it, communicating with what's going on. In other words, when I feel fear, it doesn't necessarily need to be coming from me. It can be coming from her or from him, and I should react to it, because we have mirror neurons, part of the brain that is responsible for mimicking the emotions of others, and this is how you can feel what's happening with the other person. And if someone is not telling you what they are truly feeling, or there's a mismatch between what you're perceiving and what the person is telling you, it's not because they are lying. They're simply protecting themselves or playing a certain role that maybe even unconsciously we expect them to act upon.
Well, you're saying, I hope the viewer is getting, because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, it's like,
this is hypnosis training.
That is so key, that so creating a safe space for that person.
Yes.
Because when women, because I was going to say, what the next thing that they would probably say is like, well, I do just ask him, and he doesn't tell me.
Right.
And I think you nailed it.
So tell me what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Tell me what are you feeling. But tell me, what are you feeling? It's anger, right? It's anger. I'm sure it's anger. I knew it was anger. Now you see, you're not telling me.
Yes.
You're not.
No, and even if it's much more, it could be much more subtle.
Yeah.
Because that projection doesn't feel safe. Even if it's not the projection that she may be projecting onto them feels like a judgment, and that doesn't feel safe.
And you know where it's coming from? It's because she or he, because it really doesn't depend on gender. It can be mutual, right?
Absolutely.
It can be man or woman,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though we're talking about what he's feeling, basically it's the same thing, because emotions know no sex, right? So the reason for that is that she's projecting fear on him because she's afraid that if he's angry, it's because of her. So unconsciously, she's sending him the message of, if you're angry, you're going to make me afraid. He picks up on that, and he doesn't show, or better yet, he hides his anger because he doesn't want her to be afraid. So he's protecting her from herself.
Yeah.
You understand the crazy dynamic that it causes, because both of them want good, both of them are happy, but they are playing unconscious game of suppressed emotions they picked up back at school or at home, unaware of the fact that they can safely talk with each other, because emotion comes and goes. It's not really that on the basis of emotion people will always make very serious decisions. No, we're not only emotional, we're also logical, we're also social, and there's so many aspects to human beings. When there's anger, if you know how to deal with it, because you learn certain tools from psychology or from NLP or any other style that you choose and any other model, you know how to deal with emotions, right? And then they stop becoming a problem. So the most important thing, as you were saying, is to make space for them and teach the person, educate the person, that they can safely talk about them, and they should realize what's really happening on the inside.
And that would be another video to go about how to create that safe place for your partner. And that's, like you said, it doesn't matter man, woman, woman, man. We both do it. We both project. We both make judgments. And I mean, it just would really kind of touched me just now, is just this idea that, like, you know, when you don't feel judged, that's when the truth comes out. That's when you feel free. That's when you feel free to speak your emotions and speak what you're thinking. And I mean that to me is the true height of a relationship, when you can truly not feel judged by your partner.
What is suppressed in Californian men when it comes to emotions? What they are not allowed to show?
Weakness.
Weakness. There you go. So probably all emotions like sadness, for instance, maybe even anger, will be suppressed. It doesn't mean that they don't feel them. We all feel them, because this is what humanity is about. But it also means that there will be some mechanisms of defense, of social defense, not to show it, right? And this is especially where you guys need to be careful, because this is probably where all the hooks are hidden, right? This is where the causes for quarrel and for discussions will appear, right? Especially in this context, because this is simply how the culture was educated, right? By the way, every culture will have some other emotion which is suppressed. It just depends where you go. So everywhere we go, we are not complete. And to be complete, we have to create the space of accepting what we're feeling. Accepting doesn't mean acting upon it, right? I can be very angry and not do anything with it. Or I can go take my wrestling clothes and go wrestle. And if I'm angry and I wrestle, my opponent is in big trouble. But I also gain some muscle and I feel better.
Okay, I think that's a good place to end this. This was a great conversation, and I hope that opens up some understanding between partners, because we do this to each other, and what you said about emotion, and first accepting your own emotions and not judging yourself, or not projecting judgment of other people onto yourself for your emotions. I mean, there's that too. Just creating, first and foremost, a safe place for yourself to not be judged by yourself about your emotions. And then take that next step with your partner to create a safe place for them to feel not judged, and that you're truly curious and want to understand how they're feeling.
Right, and realize that you can learn it. Emotional intelligence, put into step-by-step procedures, equips you with tools which help you communicate with the other person and with yourself.
That's beautiful.
Right.
All right, well, stay tuned for the future videos.
Thank you very much.
We've got more topics coming. Check out my website, nlp-gym.com. Follow me on Facebook for real-time updates on upcoming trainings, as well as talks that I'll be hosting with Dr. Matt coming in November, early November, right here in California. If you like this video, please click like right down here and leave a comment or a question. I will follow up with you. And while you're there, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can get these videos on a regular basis. Take care.